excited to welcome you to the show today. And we have Christy Wright here. So Christy, I'm just so excited to have you today.
Hey, thanks so much for inviting me. I'm excited about this.
Yeah. So it's at the time we're recording this, it is the new year. We're kind of like kicking off our first full week. So I want to keep going with that theme and just kind of everybody's getting back into the swing of things. So I know they're going to love this episode. But before we dive in, if somebody is not familiar with Dave Ramsey and Ramsey Solutions, do you want to explain what that is and your background and how you just got into running your business?
Sure, I would love to. So my official title is Ramsey Personality. And really what that means is Dave Ramsey, the man and the brand and the business owner, is thinking about the future. And so we have 800 team members. It's a $100 million organization. And so he started thinking about 5 to 7 years ago, thinking about the future. What does it look like when this company goes on beyond him? How will it be led from a leadership standpoint, organizationally, and also the brand, the personality-driven brand that is helping so many people. And so that's when he created a leadership board that actually now runs our organization that he's obviously a part of as he is leading it as the CEO and board member. But he's also still the main personality, but he wanted to be able to have this handoff to other personalities that carry different messages to different markets to reach more people into the future. And that's where the whole idea of Ramsey Personality was birthed. And so I am a Ramsey personality, and my main focus is helping women start businesses. So it might be a side business, it might be a small business, but helping them start and grow them to their level of success, their version of success. And so we really do that through the brand I've created called Business Boutique, where we're all about equipping women to make money doing what they love. And this started years ago through some just really sporadic research, and that research turned into intentional large scope research, and that turned into an event, and that has now turned into lots of events, a podcast, a best-selling book, my coaching group, the Academy, and multiple courses. So it's just really cool to see how faithful God has been, but it's also right in line with what we're trying to do as an organization to help as many people as possible find hope in their lives. And so that really fits in nicely to the mission of our larger organization and what Dave's trying to do in the future.
Yeah. So a couple things. First, I want my audience to see that everybody should have an exit strategy and a strategy that can go on with you, but without you, if that makes sense, right? So I love that Dave is doing that. And I love that it's such a win-win for him and then the personalities coming in, because I can only imagine the perks, the pros, the cons to being in something like this. So it's so cool. I really hope people are looking at that, building a sellable, scalable business that doesn't just take, more time, more hours away from you to make more money. So I love that. As I want to kind of unpack, how did you get started with Ramsey Solutions? How did all of a sudden Dave say, hey, I like what you're doing? Were you already doing it? Were you working for him? I don't know that background, so I'm curious.
It's a crazy story, Stacey. It's kind of a two-part crazy story. Both parts are crazy. So I'll give you the nutshell version because I know we don't have a ton of time. So I was working at the YMCA of Middle Tennessee for 3 years, and it was in nonprofit. And like a lot of nonprofits, you do work that matters, but you get burned out. You work a lot of hours for not a lot of pay, and it just kind of gets discouraging. And so after about 3 years of working 80-hour weeks, making entry-level salary, I was feeling burned out. And I also was feeling God calling me to do something different. But I felt this tension because for me, I loved the work that we did. I love the fact that we did work that matters and we changed lives and we really helped people through the YMCA. And so I know this is crazy, but just track with me here. I was on my deck one day. I was 26 years old, I think, at the time. And so I was on my deck and I was praying. And I was like, God, I know I'm supposed to do something else. It's time for me to move on, but I just don't think I'll ever find a company that I believe in as much as the YMCA. I love that we do work that matters.
Yeah.
And I felt the words in my head, you're going to work for Dave Ramsey. Now, Stacey, I don't know who Dave Ramsey is at this time. I go, great. Okay. Who is Dave Ramsey? I walk over to my computer, Google Dave Ramsey. It says based in Nashville, Tennessee. I was like, fantastic. I don't have to move.
Whoa. Okay. This is crazy.
I told you. I know. I was like, I'm going to lose half your listeners right here, but this is my story. I'm sticking to it. I had never heard of this man, and I heard those words. And the craziest part too, then I called my best friend, Jenny, and she knew I had been searching. She picked up at work and she's like, Convention and Visitors Bureau. This is Jenny. I was like, I know who I'm going to work for. She's like, who? And I said, Dave Ramsey. And she said, I knew you were going to say that. We've never talked about Dave Ramsey in our friendship. So it's a crazy story. Everyone's story is not that, but it's a crazy story. So I actually applied for a youth project coordinator position. So when I was at the YMCA, I was the aquatic director and then the district aquatic director. So I did a lot of programs for kids and youth. I had a background in young life and just had a lot of work with youth. So this is a really natural fit. I would be just doing products versus programs, swim programs, swim teams, swim lesson, lifeguarding, that kind of thing. So I came in and I would say within my first 6 months, I was doing like the Bible studies, the piggy banks, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And Rachel Cruz, Dave Ramsey's daughter, this is where we get into part 2 of Crazy Story. Dave Ramsey's daughter, Rachel, was a senior in college. She was going to be graduating in May and coming on our team. We were about 200 people at the time to be the face of the youth and teens. Now, there are no other personalities. There's no other leadership besides Dave's main leaders. But she had been a speaker as a teen in some of his youth Bible studies. It was like, oh, she's going to come be the face of our youth and teens. And that's as far as we had thought this through. Well, someone on my team in the publishing department and product department had signed Rachel up to speak at this conference. And it was called the Christ in Youth Move Conference. And it was 20 dates over the course of the summer all over the country. Okay, so you're in different small towns all over the country. And they were like, well, this will be a great experience for her to kind of get dunked in the deep end of speaking, strengthen those skills or whatever. So the whole arrangement starts to proceed through the spring of that year. This is the spring of 2010. And Rachel graduates. And 2 weeks before she's supposed to go on the road, which is, right after she graduated, we get the travel schedule from the conference. Now, during the whole spring, I had inherited this ordeal somehow. I didn't set it up, but I inherited it. So I got to be the new liaison. And we get this travel schedule. And Stacey, it's a nightmare. Like they had booked Expedia or some cheap flights where you had 2 and 3 and 4 connections. You're in an airport 8 hours a day. Lost, it was a nightmare. And so Dave looks at the schedule because it's a different state per day. So it wasn't like you got a break. Different state a day for 20 dates. And he looks at the schedule and in a lot of wisdom, he said, she's not doing this. This is too much. She's newly married, newly graduated, right out of college. She's not going to go on the road 2 weeks later and do this schedule. No one should have to do this schedule.
Yeah.
And so he said, here's the deal. She can do 10 of the dates. They can pick which 10 she does, but she can do half. She can't do this. This travel is unrealistic. So I got to be the bearer of bad news and go back to the conference and say, hey, I'm so sorry. I know your conference starts in 2 weeks, but she's not gonna be able to do all of them. So I did. I went back and I hadn't really thought through how this was going to go, Stacey. I just thought through like delivering the bomb and then seeing what happens from there. And so I said, I'm so sorry. She can't do all 20. She can do 10. So sorry. You can pick the 10. Yay. And I'll never forget the man, Chase, who I was working with, really nice guy. He said, Christy said, what am I going to do? He said, I don't have her booked for 10 keynotes. I have her booked for 20 keynotes and it starts in 2 weeks. And I said, I'll do them. And he said, can you speak? I said, I think so. Stacey, I've never spoken in my life. Oh my goodness. I'm just a problem solver. I didn't ask permission. I didn't in hindsight, I'm like, what? I had some nerve. So that's actually what happened though. I went on the road that summer. I went to every single event that Rachel went to and ran her AV. And then I flew to the other events and did the speaking myself.
So you did all 20.
And it was a grind. I got stories for days about that summer, Stacey. Really threw me in the deep end. And so that fall, at the same time, our company was realizing a real need for more speakers because Dave himself was turning down 3,000 speaking requests a year that he couldn't do. And this was back when he was speaking a lot. And so they created something called the Speakers Group. And it was 5 men, 2 women, Rachel Cruz and myself. No audition, no interview, no application. They just slid me in because I'd done such a great job that summer.
Right.
And here's a really important takeaway for your audience. And I've been teaching this recently because I think this is really important. When you're entering into business, and even as you're growing your business, let's say you've had it for 5 years, but you're growing it to the next level. It's very tempting to want to see the perfect path of how you're going to get from A to B or A to Z. And my big takeaway from how I became a now professional speaker, as that's one of my primary ways that I influence and help people and make an impact and grow my platform and this brand, is I said yes before I knew how. I didn't know how to speak. I didn't know how I was going to pull this off, but I did say yes to the opportunity and I said yes to solving that problem. And through doing it, I became very proficient. And that's how you learn how to do things, is you do them. And so I just want to encourage your listeners, if there's something, they're just right there on the cusp of doing something, but they're hesitant to take the step or pull the trigger, do it. Say yes before you know how. And it's in the doing that you learn how to do it. So the speakers group has now evolved, obviously, into the Ramsey personalities. And we have our brands and our messages and our markets and our individual kind of efforts to help people. But it all started with I'll do the other events, I guess. you
Okay,
know,
I love this story. So tell me what year this was that you did these 20 or 10 events. What year was that? How far?
2010.
2010. Okay, cool. So I also
I'd been at the company 6 months. I'd been at the company 6 months when I,
Okay.
in my little tiny cubicle in the middle of nowhere where no one could find me,
Yeah.
said, I'll do it. And he was like, can you speak? And I was like, I think so. I had no idea what I was doing. Looking back, I'm like, the nerve that I had as a 26-year-old to think I was just going to insert myself.
Right. But I think that's why when we're a little young and naive sometimes and we're so willing to do it,
Yep.
I kind of miss those days because now it's like, oh, I don't know. And
We get
back
so
then,
practical.
yeah, we do. And we self-sabotage sometimes because we think, who am I? Or why should I be
Right.
doing this? And I love that helped you. So you've been getting good at it because you've been doing it these last 9 years where you have been speaking out in front of the camera. So I love that story. I always ask people their backgrounds because I love hearing it. You never know what's going to come out. So I didn't know that. Really, really interesting. Now you just brought up planning, like this perfect plan, this roadmap. It's the beginning of 2019. Let's talk about our perfect roadmap for 2019. Maybe we've already written our goals. We know what we want it to look like. What do you do for goal setting? I'm curious what that looks like for you. And then what do you do when it doesn't go as planned? Like did 2008 go perfectly planned for you? Were there a little surprise here and there?
Yeah. That's a great example. I'll give you an example of last year, actually, 2018, a goal, one of the goals that I set and how I had to completely abandon it. And that's hard for me because I'm a really goal-oriented person. Mm-hmm. And so I tend to hold my feet to the fire, even if the whole world has changed around me. All the things that set up that original goal are no longer true. I'm still like, I gotta do, and I think a lot of people are like that. So last year I had been having a lot of knee trouble through the fall of 17, spring of 18. And I was going through rehab, doing everything I needed to do to strengthen my knees so that I could run the country music marathon. Now, this doesn't seem like a big deal, but the country music half marathon is a special thing in my life. I met my husband training for it. We ran it together the week before our wedding, and I run it almost every single year. So it's a really special race to me, and I try to run it if I can. So I was going through rehab, physical therapy, trying to get my knee back, and I was really getting it back, and I was feeling really good. I was doing all my exercises, all the very annoying physical therapy exercises that no one gets excited about. I was doing them because I really wanted my knee to be well so I could run this half marathon. Well, in March, it was March, maybe second week of March. And on Sunday, I did my long run for that day. And I had been behind on my training because of the knee. And so I was kind of playing catch up. And I ran 7 miles that day. And it was a really strong 7 miles. Like I was in the 7:30 mile range, really fast for me. I was just on top of the world. I was like, yes, I'm going to be back. I'm going to do this. I can do this. This is the fastest pace I've ever run these training runs. This is going to be great. I'm just feeling really, really good. Monday morning, I get on a flight to go to Salt Lake City for our first business boutique one-day event of the spring. And a man drops a suitcase on my head and I get a concussion.
Oh my goodness.
And Stacey, I've never had a concussion. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I couldn't say my name. I couldn't touch my nose. I was blurry. I didn't know. People would ask me questions and I would just stare at them because I couldn't. It was this really difficult recovery process that lasted months to get myself back to good. And one of the most important thing you can do when you have a concussion is rest and not read and not think and not, and running a half marathon is not on the list of things that help. So I had to just completely abandon that goal and I had to completely cancel my race entry. Now that's an extreme analogy or an extreme example rather, but I think it's really important to set goals at the beginning of the year. But goal setting for me is not a set it and forget it. It's a set it and revisit it. Every single month, you're revisiting those beginning of the year goals, those annual goals, and saying, what do I need to do this month toward that goal? And is that goal still right? Yeah. Is that timeline still right? Is the why of why I set that goal still there? Because I always encourage people to not only set a goal that is specific, measurable, and has a time limit, but also write out your why. Are you chasing that dream? Are you saying I'm going to read 30 books this year because your cousin is and you think you should? Are you saying I'm going to lose 50 pounds because your husband, has made some comments about your dress being too tight and you're doing it because someone else is, or your mother-in-law, your mom, or why are you setting this goal? Because why you set it drastically affects your ability to achieve it and stick with it past February, past April, and so on. And so I think it's really important you set them at the beginning of the year, then revisit them every month to make sure you're working that month and each week toward that goal. And also asking yourself if it's still right, do you need to adjust it, reset it, revisit it, maybe just renew your energy for it. So for me, it's a ever evolving thing, not a January 1st only thing.
Yeah, for sure. So when the suitcase incident happened, was that on the before? I hope it was after the business boutique event.
No, Stacy.
Before?
It was on my flight there, and then I flew to Salt Lake. Elevation, flew there, which you're not supposed to fly afterwards. I went to the clinic and to get assessed. And I'm like trying to fill out the paperwork, and I couldn't fill it out. And he's doing all these tests like they do with football players, trying to get me to touch my nose. I can't. It also makes you highly emotional. Like I'm emotional anyway, but it makes you very emotional. So when I'm standing in this clinic and he asks me to touch my nose and my hands go to my chin, I just start bawling because you're scared. You're thinking, this is my brain. I'm telling my hands to touch my nose and they're not. And so I had a really honest conversation with him. I said, listen, I know I'm not supposed to think. I know I'm supposed to rest and sleep. I can't do that. What I'm going to do tomorrow is actually the exact opposite. I'm reading stage notes. I'm hitting times. I'm hitting clocks. I'm throwing slides. I'm teaching all day. I said, can I do it? And he said, you can do it, but you have to go slow. He goes, if you try to go fast, which you can tell I'm a fast talker already, Stacey, if you try to go fast, your brain cannot keep up with your speed. You have to go slow. If you go very slow, you can do it. And so that night, my Megan Ledford, who runs all my AV and production behind the curtain, with the slides and stuff, she came to my hotel room and we sat there and we stripped about 50% of the content.
I was going to say,
I'm sorry, Salt Lake, you got half, just so I could slow down. So I wasn't forced to rush because it's already cram packed. So we're like, we're going to give me some room to breathe. And I still did some things but no one knew because I wouldn't say it. I was like, if I tell this audience, they're going to be so concerned about me because my tribe, they're my best friends. Like they will be more concerned about my well-being than even hearing the content. So I was like, I'm not going to tell them unless I absolutely have to. And there was one point when I was going through the business plan and I was talking about the tiers and I was like, now it's time for tier 3. No, tier through. Tier 3?
Oh no.
And it's like, I was like, ha. Anyway, I just kept going. Like I just, just stumbled a little bit, but I made it through by the grace of God. I made it through. So it was a crazy, I never talked about that really publicly because I wanted to make sure I let plenty of time go by, but it's been plenty of time now, but they had no idea, I think,
Well, and what's funny is it's so easy to make excuses and to say, oh, I can't do this because, or, this, and you have a concussion and you are hosting an event for an entire day. I mean, I can't even imagine. It's scary enough. And there's so much anxiety about doing it when you're fully present and your brain may not be able to catch up. Wow. Yeah.
I think it depends on when you're in business too. I think it's really discerning the pros and cons. Like, is it worth it to them what it's going to take out of you? So like, for example, Business Boutique, that is my event. I keynote the entire day except for one session. So that's not something we can just have someone hop in. And so for me to push through and do that was really, really important. It was absolutely the right decision. But then a few weeks later, this was maybe like 2 or 3 weeks later, I guess, I was feeling better, but still not 100%. And I was supposed to speak as one of the 9 speakers at the SMART conference. And I set that one out. They said, Christy can be here. They sent out a video digitally of one of my talks, but that's not worth it to them what it's going to take out of me.
No,
How I feel when there's 8 other speakers, like they're coming for everybody. They're not coming for me. No one will be sad. They'll be fine,
And they'll understand, right? Like that's a big difference. And when somebody's coming, if you would have all of a sudden swapped somebody in the next day, there's a lot of people that came just to see you and they would have been happy just to see you. They don't even need to speak. They're like, Christy's there. She's here, right? So I just think it shows you, like, first of all, your ability to go, I'm doing this. Like, I want to be here for my audience, my tribe. So what a cool story. And just another example of stop making excuses because it's really easy to let things get in your way. And that's a pretty big deal that you did that. So thanks for sharing that story. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, sorry, we're going off on tangents, but this is good stuff. I feel like I'm getting all the gossip. Like I
got lots of stories. I got stories for days.
So as you're looking at like last year and you're going, okay, I couldn't do the marathon. I couldn't do this. How hard was it to slow down and what did slowing down look like for you after that concussion? I mean, did it affect business? Did things change? Because if you're not being able to be fully there, what did your everyday look like and how long did you have to kind of take a break?
Yeah, I think it was really difficult because that specific injury, which I think this can be true, you can apply this to a lot of things that probably your listeners are going through. It's not something that you can tell visibly is wrong with me.
Yeah.
So let me give you an example. A month after the concussion, when I'm in the office, I'm going to meetings, I'm doing things. People think I'm fine, even though I've told them I'm not fine. I'm not right yet. This is going to be a long road. And I met with multiple neurologists and people that were like, this is a long road for you. I actually had post-concussion syndrome, which means it doesn't last 3 to 5 days. It can last 3 to 5 months. And so like I was in a meeting, for example, and one of our project managers said across the table, it's lots of people in this meeting. She said across the table, Christy, something, asked me a question. What do you think about this timeline? And I just stared at her. And she said, I said, I heard you. I'm just trying to think of the answer. Like, I know this sounds crazy, but thinking was hard. Okay, so maybe your listeners probably don't have a concussion. I hope they don't. But if you have something going on in your life, a health scare, a struggle in your marriage, your child is on the verge of getting kicked out of school, you're not bringing your A game to your business, and that's okay. So for you to understand like when and where and how you can and should push through. But when you're not there, when I couldn't come up with an answer for a question because my brain was not working, when you are so distracted because your child's principal is calling you on the phone, give yourself grace there, because I think we have this idea that we can compartmentalize our life. We have a work life and a home life. You don't. You just have one life, and your work life will affect your home and your home life will affect your work. And so learning how to sort through that and manage your day in a way that is both grace-filled and pushing yourself through and to your point, not making excuses. And that's a fine line of discerning through that. But I think it's really important to be able to do when you have things that are competing for your attention or just struggles in life that you go through, because you will.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think as well, and you're probably like this too, but I am very vocal about my goals. Like I'll tell everybody that wants to hear about my goals. I'll go on a Facebook Live. And when you talked about abandoning your goals, and sometimes it's hard because you've told people and now you're going, I don't want to look like somebody who's just talking about it. Right, I want to make sure they understand. So have you ever had to publicly abandon some of your goals that you're like, oh, I've told people and what are they going to think? And like, how do you get through that? And what do you tell yourself and what do you tell your tribe?
Well, I had talked about the marathon goal, so that was one, for example. Okay. But years ago, I ran the country music full marathon. All mine apparently are around the country music marathon. This comes to mind. This was in 2010, actually. Okay. I was training for the country music full marathon, which is 26.2 miles. And I had the goal to run it in 4 hours. And that was a realistic goal for me. It was a stretch goal, but it was realistic based on what my paces were and that type of thing. It was not my first full marathon. I'd done other full marathons. And on that day, on race day, it was the most torrential, poor storms, lightning bolts. Like at mile 21, there's police in trench coats with megaphones going, turn back now. Well, of course, we're at mile 21. First of all, we've made it 21 miles. We're not turning back. Second of all, we're a little delirious and we're not thinking clearly. So we're like, I don't know who you are in the trench coat. I'm just going to keep running. Anyway, at one point when we were supposed to turn left, the road turned right. They had it blocked. Well, we just followed the crowd. And because you seriously are not thinking quite clearly when you run that mileage, it took us about a minute delay. And then everyone around me we were all just kind of running at the same pace. We got to the water station. Someone goes, wait a minute. Weren't we supposed to turn back there? And it clicks. They'd shut down the road because they were shutting down the race. And so I crossed the finish line at 22.5 miles. And I was really discouraged because in my mind, I did everything I could to continue running, even in the rain, to push through. And it was out of my control. And so I'd said on my blog, like publicly, 4 hour marathon, 4 hours. I'm going to believe, I'm going to speak it into being. And I was like, no, like it was a 22, and then I really wrote about what it's like. And I talk about this in my book, Business Boutique, what it's like when you fall short. And I think it's easy when you fall short to feel shame. But what I encourage people to do is to look at what they did do. I ran 22.54 miles that day, which is more than most people will run in their lifetime. And that's something to be really proud of. So let's say you set a goal to increase your Facebook following to 10,000 followers this year, and you only got 8,000. But instead of saying, oh, I fell short, I failed, say, I've got 8,000 followers. I was only at 3,000. Look how I've expanded and grown. And so, actually the goal setting chapter in Business Boutique, the book, is one of my favorite chapters because it's very tactical of putting your dreams into action. And there's a specific section on what to do when you fall short, because the reality is all of your best laid plans, life will happen. Things will be out of your control, whether it's concussions or weather, or just you get sick or something goes wrong or you need to reset. And that doesn't mean that's a failure. It just means you learned and you're going to adjust and be proud of what you did do.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and it's so easy to, like you said, look at what we didn't hit, or, oh, but I wanted this. Yeah, but you're the one that made up this random number of 10,000, and
Right.
who's to say that was the number you were supposed to hit, right?
Right.
So, yeah, you've got to give yourself a little grace, because we get very caught up, especially in the numbers. It's very easy to pick a number out of thin air and then get very upset when we don't hit it. So I completely
Yes.
get that.
I will say too that I think with goals, especially with social media, there's this idea that, and it's like this with money too, ironically, when it comes to things where we can measure them by numbers, I think we believe the lie that there is a number at which we will feel like we have arrived. And there's not. There's not an amount of money you will ever make that you feel like you've arrived. There's not an amount of Facebook followers that you will hit that you will feel like you have arrived. It's always more. The way I describe it is the finish line always moves. You get there and it moves. You get there and it's never enough. You get there and you need more. So if you understand that you're chasing a moving finish line, then you can be proud of where you are today. You can set goals, absolutely set goals. But there was actually an interesting study done around the money side of this, which you can apply this to anything. And researchers wanted to understand people's perception of richness. Like, what qualifies that someone is rich? Yeah. So they interviewed a couple that made $100,000 a year, and they said, "Are you rich? Are you wealthy?" And they said, "Us, no." And they said, "Okay, well, what amount of money would you need to make to be rich?" And they said, $200,000. If we made $200,000 a year, we'd be rich. They said, okay. They went to a family that made $200,000 a year and asked them, "Are you rich?" They said, "Us, no." I said, "Okay, what amount of money would you need to make?" $400,000. If we made $400,000 a year, we'd be rich. They kept doing this again and again and again, going to that next income level until they got to a family that made $5 million a year. And they asked them, "Are you rich? Are you wealthy?" And they said, "Us, no." And they said, "Okay, well, what amount of money would you need to make to be considered rich?" And they said 10 million. Every single time it was double. So do you want to know how much money that you need to feel secure? More than you have right now. Do you want to know how many Facebook followers you need to feel like you've arrived and you're a celebrity? More than you have for the rest of your life. So it's like, that sounds depressing, but it's also encouraging to know, be proud of what you have instead of envying people that have 2,000 Facebook followers or 200,000 or 2 million. Take care of your 200. Show up for your 200. Be faithful for your 200 Facebook followers, because they're there for you. And I really believe, like scripture says, until you are faithful in the small things, God's not going to give you more things. So be faithful with the ones that you have, and then God can trust you with the more.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I feel like, you know, there's all these numbers, whether it's our gross revenue or our profitability or the social media followers. When are we ever going to say, "Oh, I'm good. I did good this year. I'm going to stay there"? Never. Especially if you have this entrepreneurial spirit where you're just wanting more and we want to be a better version of ourselves. It's so easy to keep moving that. So I always tell people, like, this isn't a race, it's a marathon. So this goes perfect with our talk today.
Yes, exactly. So many running analogies. It really is true. And what psychologists have shown again and again through research is it's actually not achieving a goal that's the most fulfilling part for people. It's not achieving a certain income level that is the most fulfilling part. It's the growth. It's the experience of getting from where you are to there. So it's like you're more fulfilled in the process of getting there than actually getting there. You're more fulfilled in being stretched than you are actually arriving. So if you set a goal this year to increase your personal income by 25%, you may reach that, but you're going to have that same desire the following year because you desire the growth, you desire the progress and the stretch. We're all, human beings are wired for progress. And that's really, really important to notice. It's not just getting there. It truly is the process and the progress of getting there.
Yeah, completely. And they say that about vacations, that it's the anticipation of going on vacation is better sometimes than the vacation itself.
That's right.
Oh, okay, love that. All right, last question I want to bring up with you is, this year you came out with a journal, like a planner, right? So this is something you've never done before. So I want to ask you, putting something out there new, there's going to be a lot of people this year in 2019 coming out with something that they've never done, having the fear of the unknown. Are people going to like it? You know, all of that. How was that for you this year? Is it a gamble? Is it, you know, in your heart, this is going to be it? Like, how was that for you?
It's always a risk. Anytime you do something new, it's a risk. It's a gamble. You don't know. It's a conversation with the marketplace, and you don't know till you put it in the marketplace and you get feedback. So like when I got my first few Amazon reviews, I was like, yeah, like I was so excited because it was a new thing. And the marketplace was responding. So I will say this, my biggest takeaway from building the planner, and the planner I really do feel like is so beautiful and what I want and what I would use and what I am using and so on. But it took us a little bit to get there. And what I mean by that is we were trying to deliver something to our tribe, to our audience that we knew they wanted and would use. And that's a planner. My audience loves planners. They love highlighters. They love organization. They love all the things. The only problem is I don't use planners. I don't personally use calendars, paper calendars. I don't do that. I use my phone. So I thought, okay, I'm not going to create something I wouldn't use. I'm not going to create something that I can't stand on stage and say, this is my favorite. I use this. I love this. So I thought, how can I find a middle ground between what they want and what I would really use that I can believe in and stand behind? And so then I started thinking, I was like, okay, well, I don't use paper calendars. I use my phone. But here's what I do. I read books to grow for personal development. I use workbooks if I'm doing a Bible study, right? Like I'll fill in the workbooks and the answers and the questions. I journal for goal setting. And so these are all things that I use. So it's like, let's make it all that and a calendar. So that's what we created. So it has content every single month that teaches them a topic. And then it has questions for reflection to actually kind of like a workbook to put into practice and reflect on it in their own lives. Then there's templates for them to use the worksheet to put it into action. Then there's the paper calendar. And then there's the weekly spreads with the to-do list. And it has places for what you're grateful for and scripture and self-care, all the things that are very me and on brand and very my personality and my lifestyle as well. And so what we came up with was something that I'm like, it's not just that I would use this. I'm obsessed with this. Like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. So when I talk about it so authentically because we worked hard to not just say, oh, there's a problem in the marketplace. Let's go fill it. And everybody else is filling it too, but we're going to try to fill it also. Now, how can we fill it differently in a way that's very true to me and my brand and my teaching? And it was some wrestling to get there, but gosh, it was so worth it. So don't just put something out there, put something out there that you love and you're crazy about, and you'll attract people like you that are crazy about it too.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, because people want to know, what does Christy do? So when you put out there something that everybody else is already doing, it's kind of like, well, I already heard this. I already seen this. So I think it is so important that you stay true to what it is that you would intentionally do. So of course you love it when you're putting in that much work. Whereas how do you sell something that you don't really love? People can just feel it. So I'm so excited for you. So the planner launched this past year, to jump into 2019. Have you already learned anything that you'll do different for next time? Okay.
Yes. So I didn't know this because I clearly don't live in the planner world, as you can tell. Planner season starts in like August. I thought it was like Christmas. I know. Most people are marketing their planners, and the consumers that are planner people know this, and they are buying, searching, researching, deciding about their planner in August, September. So we were way behind the curveball. We planned to launch at my fall event in November, and we bumped it up to do a pre-sale October 15th. But even that was a stretch because we weren't even getting inventory until November. So we said next year, we're bumping it up to be in the planner selling season. Well, that brings up another point of something we learned. When you bump it up that early, the audience wants to get something they can use immediately. So you don't want to sell a planner in August that you can't start until January. So we're talking about adding on these months, even if it's a digital download, that they can get it, start it, and then maybe it's 16 months calendar, something like that. I also noticed that we have the monthly spreads and the weekly spreads, and each day we don't have a year. We don't have a year at a glance where you can see the entire year. So just anytime you do something new, you're going to learn and get feedback. And it's all been very positive. I'm like, oh my gosh, in hindsight, once it's out there, you're like, oh, it's like you launch the book and you find the typo. You're like,
completely. And I feel like you just won't know until you do. So again, just like you learn to speak by doing, you're going to learn all about the planner by doing. So don't let the unknown hold you back from putting out whatever it is, because you will learn very quickly when it's time to get out there and do that. So I love that. Thanks for sharing kind of the lessons. I didn't know if it was too soon to already ask you, or if you've already started.
No, we're in it. No, that's great. We're learning in real time. But I think that's a really important point you bring up, because so many businesswomen I work with, they have this idea that they want to get the thing perfect before you put it out. And I just want them to hear that that is a lie. There is no such thing as perfect, because you know what's going to happen next year? Stacey, we're going to get that planner out there, the 2020 planner, and we're going to get feedback, and we're going to change it the next year. You need to get out your first version, your 1.0 version, and let the audience, the market tell you what they want more and less of. And you iterate for version 2, 2.0, but you continue to iterate, and you're never done iterating, because your job as a business owner is to meet the needs of the marketplace, and the marketplace's needs are always changing. So you're never going to get to perfect where you're done with it. You put it out and it's done and everybody loves it. you're continually having that conversation, but you can't have the conversation if you don't start it by getting the thing out there. So I love that you brought that up, because so many people are paralyzed by waiting for perfect, and it doesn't exist. Just get it out there.
Yeah. And it's like your feedback, finding the typo or doing this is never as good as the feedback of the people using it. So the feedback you're getting from clients right now, they're actually participating in it, using it every day. That is priceless. And like, hurry and get that stuff out there so you get that feedback to make next year's even better. So
that's exactly right.
Oh, Christy, so good. Thank you for coming on today. I know my audience is just like eating this up right now, so I appreciate it. I want to ask you before we go, what is like one big focus for 2019 for you?
Well, I'll tell you, it's my word for the year. And my word for the year didn't go real well last year. Last year, my word for the year was easy, and I got a puppy, which was like worst idea ever, and a long list of other things. So anyway, this year I'm going to stick to my word for real.
Okay.
My word this year is quality. And what I mean by that is I want less in my life, but better. So I want quality time, not everyone staring at screens. I want quality pieces in my home, not a bunch of crap from, hand-me-downs and thrift stores and all the toys from Chick-fil-A. Like, I want less stuff, but better stuff. And so really, for me, focusing on quality is important. I'm such a doer, and I love all the things that I tend to chase a million things. I want to pick a few things, and we're working on that strategically through Business Boutique, but even in my life and how I manage my calendar, time with my kids, time with family, to really be selective and make sure it's quality time, quality decisions, quality goals, less goals, but better goals, that type of thing. So it's all about quality this year.
Oh, I love that. Okay, you guys, this has been so good. Christy, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time. I know you are a busy lady, and you're picking this podcast to be on. So thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Well, thanks for having me. I love what you do. And anytime I can champion you, I'm happy to. I just love seeing women champion women. So thanks for what you do.
Oh, thank you too.